This week on the Pro Wrestling Podcast, CM Punk ready to move on to his next endeavor, but AEW won't let him go. At least not yet. FTR possibly taking a year off after their AEW contract is up. Ric Flair shoots hard on Eric Bischoff. I thought that shit was done with. And 95% of today's wrestlers have no idea how to get over. This according to Disco Inferno, the expert. I'm your host, Seth Grimes, and this is the Pro Wrestling Podcast. What's up, y'all? Welcome. Come on in. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Pro Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, Seth Grimes. Appreciate having you here today. We got a lot of fun stuff to get into, including one from fucking Jameson. I didn't even know this guy was still alive. Apparently he is, and I found an interview that he did this week about wrestling. So I'm super excited to share that one with you especially. But we got all kinds of fun stuff to get into. But first, how was your week? How are you guys doing? Are you holding up as we wrap up the year here of 2020, the year of our Lord, right? One of the worst years in the history of the world, in my opinion. Just a rough year. It's been a rough couple of years, has it not? Excited to get this year over with, roll into 2023, which I'm sure will be equally as bad, if not worse. But hey, we can all have hope, can we not? But let's go ahead and just get into the show because we got a lot of fun stuff to talk about, including this first topic here today. CM Punk is reportedly ready to move the fuck on from AEW and begin a new life, but AEW doesn't quite want to let go. Of course, this, according to Dave Meltzer, who take him with a grain of salt. Suddenly, Meltzer's got all the scoops on Punk, right? He was the same guy that reported, people close to Punk were upset or not happy with the Elite taking their shots at Punk last week and again this week. And it seems to be a thing that they're going to continue to do, perhaps. There's more shit about it on BTE, but we're not going to cover all that this week. Punk wants out. He wants out of there. At least that's what Meltzer's saying. Let's go ahead and listen to this clip from Wrestling Observer Radio. Brian Alvarez breaking down the details according to Meltzer.
CM Punk is ready and willing to move to his next project. Dave Meltzer addressed the latest on Punk's AEW status, noting the former world champion still under contract being paid by the promotion. Well, that is true. Punk, as of this weekend, Dave said, was still under contract AEW being paid. Those close to him say the holdup on his being released is all on the AEW side, as he is ready and willing to move to his next project. It said here that following the November 23rd Dynamite, there was some speculation the Elite mocking Punk and referencing All Out in their match was teasing a future Punk versus Elite program. It was noted in The Observer, those close to the situation say there's, quote, no chance of that happening. I tried to tell you guys that.
This sucks so bad the way that this whole thing unfolded. If this is really the end of CM Punk, it's a fucking travesty. It really is, because we, for years, collectively as a wrestling fan base, for 7 years, chanted CM Punk anytime wrestling was boring, lame, sucky, shitty. It was our battle cry as fans to let people know that what we're watching sucks and we want something better, that we want our hero back, our anti-hero, CM Punk. This was a chant that came out usually when matches were just boring and shitty and no one cared. and people would just chant for CM Punk, and it happened nonstop for 7 years. Nobody ever forgot this man, and he mentioned that on his return promo at the first dance in Chicago. I heard you. For 7 years, I heard you. God, this whole thing, it just sucks, right? Like, Punk's not going to budge. He's not going to come back and try to play ball or anything like that. We covered that last week. Punk's laughing at this whole thing. So he's ready to move on. I don't know what he's ready to move on to. I don't know if he's looking to just continue his MMA commentary career and movies and that sort of thing, because he's, that's what he was doing for the 7 years he was off, TV shows. He's going to be more of a full-time character on Heels this year. He did 2 episodes last season. If you haven't watched that show, you should. It's fucking great. It really is. Punk was on there, and he was great on there, and I think he's going to have a more reoccurring role. He's got his MMA commentary with Cage Fury. And, there's even the talks that Triple H might be willing to bring him in for at least a shot or something. And that's not even to rule out his possibility of going to New Japan. I think Punk's too big of a star to just start doing like low-level indie shit. And by low-level indie shit, I don't mean the indie show in your fucking neighbor's backyard. I mean like MLW, for example, or GCW, or even New Japan Strong. New Japan in Japan is kind of on the border. I'd say they're the third biggest company in the world. I think they're, definitely big enough to have Punk, but I don't know that he would go that low. I think he'd be looking to either go back to WWE for a shot or just not wrestle at all anymore, though reports are that he's got that wrestling bug in him again from doing it, that he loves this shit and he wants to keep doing it. Who knows? Maybe Freddie Prinze Jr. will scoop him up for his Fed. Who knows? And AEW doesn't want to let Punk go, and I wonder what's going on there all of a sudden, because it seemed to me that they were the ones that were just done with him. We don't want this guy around here anymore. He's a poison to our locker room. I think Tony Khan is a mark for CM Punk, and I don't blame him. I'm a mark for CM Punk too. I think Khan really wants Punk there, but I think his locker room is fairly united against Punk. And I think that's where Tony Khan is. That's where his hang-up is. He knows Punk's going to be where the money's at. He knows he's a giant star that he can market and run with his brand. Look, Chris Jericho aside, Bryan Danielson aside, CM Punk is the name that roster needs to be taken. Like, they lost stock after losing CM Punk. They really did. Not just the drama that gave them a bad look, but they lost stock. Like, don't feel like they're as big or major league of a company now. And which is sad, because you got Bryan Danielson, who literally main evented WrestleMania before, in the same year that he debuted on AEW, but he's been used just so poorly that he's basically fucking Eddie Kingston at this point. And Eddie Kingston should be a bigger star than he is. And Chris Jericho, as big of a star as he is, he's almost starting to feel like the old washed up big star in a small pond. And I wouldn't have said that before. Yeah, look, AEW is a strong number 2. But I feel like, their ratings are starting to slip. Now their demographic is even starting to slip. I feel like AEW's kind of starting to fall here. I'm not predicting the end, but God, they could find themselves closer to TNA than they are to WWE real fucking quick, and that's a bad look if that happens. But they're putting no effort into Rampage still. They're doing barely anything to make Dynamite a must-see show. It's just hopefully MJF can carry them to some higher ratings, and that remains to be seen still. But I think it's going to be a huge blow to them if they lose CM Punk. I don't want to see it happen. I do think let CM Punk heal 100% at this point and bring him back when it's been basically a year, re-debut him at All Out. He could return and he could be the biggest heel. Bring him back as a heel. Lean into it. But you gotta, you're going to alienate your entire locker room if you do that, unless he's willing to make amends, which I don't think he will. So I do believe we have seen the end of CM Punk. And I don't know what AEW's hang-up is. We had heard before it was just the non-compete part of it, but maybe there's a part of them that still wishes that it could make it happen. But again, it's sad. It just really is sad. He came in so hot, the first dance, and now just this mess. And he's tarnished his entire legacy. He really has. Even if he does move on to somewhere else, he's not going to have that, it's going to be a giant black mark on his career for the rest of his life. Dax the Axe Harwood did an interview with Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select this week. And this was a really fun interview, actually. Dax is really he really opens up in interviews. If he trusts you and feels comfortable, man, he'll spill his guts, And he really opened up with Sean, and it talked about a wide variety of things from, the amount that they're being used on TV and to, the fun that they've been having on the indies, working with the Rock and Roll Express and all that. Dax talked a lot about CM Punk and even a little bit of Sasha Banks and about how maybe they're misunderstood and that they just have a passion for wrestling and that, Punk was always good to him, and lots of really fun stuff on there. But I thought the key takeaway from this interview was when they were asked about, or when Dax was asked about FTR's contract status, he was pretty upfront about what he might be looking to do or what the FTR might be looking to do when their AEW contract is up. Check out this clip.
I think your deals are probably up next year at some point, as of now, unless you guys have re-signed. But not only do you have, you're in AEW, but WWE's got a new regime. You very clearly made a good impression on New Japan. You very clearly made a good impression in Mexico. So not only do you have one options, you have options that branch into other options coming up. So, how do guys like you kind of look at that and survey the landscape, which was categorically different than the last time you were on the free market?
Yeah, man. I don't know. It's very intriguing and very exciting. Here's the thing. Hunter took a chance on us in 2015, and he put the tag belts on a relatively unknown, relatively unproven tag team, and he let us run with it. And then he gave us American Alpha, and he gave us Enzo and Cass, and he gave us DIY, and he gave us that platform. And then we went to the main roster, and things happened, and when we were ready to go, Tony Khan picked us up. You know what I mean? And so I have loyalty to both of these guys for what they have done for me, and done for my family. But also, I'm never satisfied in wrestling.
Sure.
There's a lot of stuff I want to keep doing, and I've got a short amount of time to do it. So Cash and I have talked, our deals come up at the end of April. I'd have to check with my lawyer, Mike Dawkins, but I think that's right, the end of April. And we've even thought about, what if we just take a year off of TV wrestling?
Sure.
You know what I mean? If we do take a year off of TV wrestling, I don't think you'll not see us. You might not see us mainstream, but it would be so Cash and I can, one, rest our bodies because we haven't been able to do that in 8 years, but two, we can do things that make us happy and bring joy to us, and then we'll go from there, I guess.
So I saw that AEW has a tag team title match planned for Dynamite this week. FTR will challenge the Acclaimed. I don't know that it's FTR's time anymore. I think it might have passed them up, which fucking sucks because I wanted that visual of FTR holding all the gold, right? They got the Ring of Honor tag team titles, the New Japan tag team titles, the AAA tag team titles, and I want them to add the fucking AEW tag team titles to that. But it should have happened all the way back at All Out over the fucking summer or Labor Day or whatever it was, when the Bucks still had the tag team titles. That was the match, and I'll still bitch about that every chance I get because it was a travesty. But now I think, like, look, now we're at a time where FTR is going to eventually lose these tag team titles. You know, they're going to start to lose the AAA tag team titles, the New Japan titles. They got a defense in January at Wrestle Kingdom, and I think that, you know, that might be a place where they end up losing the titles because they can't be over in Japan nonstop, right? It was a fun little gimmick, and it was the perfect time when they were winning all the gold to win the AEW gold and to win it from the Bucks. The Acclaim's hot right now still. They're you know, maybe cooled off a little bit, but AEW as a product has cooled off a little bit. So I don't think that's necessarily a problem with the Acclaimed specifically. Look, Daddy Ass, man. He's fucking Daddy Ass is the shit. He gets over. But so I don't know that they're going to be taking the titles off of the Acclaim, to be 100% honest with you. I couldn't call that one. I can't look at this and be like, yup, FTR is going to be running away with it. And look, if they do, I will love it because FTR is my favorite tag team, and I do believe FTR is the greatest tag team in the business right now. Period. End of story. Though another great thing Dax said in this interview with SRS is he was asked, you know, who he thinks are the best, and Dax said that he thought the Briscoes were. He said that the Briscoes were very underrated and that they were probably the best tag team in the world, next to FTR, of course, but I think it's a little too late. They should have pulled the trigger on it over the summer. And I don't know that FTR's got much longer to be holding all these other belts, to be dripping in the gold, to be doing the Ultimo Dragon thing with all the belts, right? I just think it was a missed opportunity. And look, I'm glad it worked out for the Acclaimed. They were certainly the beneficiaries of FTR getting buried. But it's a little too late now at this point. I don't know that the steam is behind FTR. I know the fans love FTR, but it's not just being over. You have to ride the wave of momentum, right? Like you could feel it in the air, like it was FTR's time over the summer. And that's why it was like such a weird switcheroo when like FTR was in a fucking, they were in an 8-man tag, and then the Bucks went to do the trios titles, and they switched to Swerve in Our Glory for the tag. It's like, what is going on here? So I feel like FTR's moment, and then they haven't been on TV. Like, all of a sudden we're getting tag team title shot. You've been fucking buried on TV for months and months now. They're not even on the AEW video game. Literally the best tag team in your company. And I'm not saying that, you know, you might have a more favorite tag team, but if you're going to match skill sets here, FTR pound for pound is the greatest tag team in the world. Period. You know, maybe the Usos, but I would say FTR could probably outwork the Usos as well. It's FTR all day, every day, but they don't have the momentum behind them right now. And frankly, if I was Tony Khan, I don't know that I would pull the trigger on the Acclaimed losing right now, because then now you're just going to kill the Acclaimed. You know, you're in the process of building the Acclaimed, and I don't know that there's momentum behind FTR. You know, the fans will always love FTR and respect FTR, and they will always be deserving of the tag team titles, but they need to be on that trajectory, right? Where you're like, oh shit, I can feel this coming. This is their time. And just a random pop-up match on a Dynamite? No, this is probably not going to work out in FTR's favor. And if that's the case, then, you know, I hate AEW so much. I really do. Because I love AEW. I was a huge AEW mark. But how do you botch? Look at Miro. The guy hasn't even been on TV still to this day. Did Miro bang Tony Khan's girlfriend or something? Like, literally, what's going on here? FTR, same thing. Like, these guys are barely used. I do think Triple H will spotlight them better than Tony Khan has at this point. The only perk to them being in AEW is we get to see them do other shit, like the AAA, the fucking New Japan stuff, Ring of Honor. We're going to wrestle the Rock and Roll Express. Like, those are the fun things that FTR gets to do because they work for Tony Khan. But he has not used them as being the greatest tag team in the world. And did they rub him the wrong way backstage? Did they got a beef? I would love to hear the shoot interview after FTR leaves AEW and just hear the details why. And this is why I have lost faith in AEW. This is a perfect example of this. Because if you have a team like FTR on your roster and you fucking keep them off TV and you let the Bucks play their politics and fucking run from them and refuse to work with them, and you bury them and you want to push other tag teams, which is fine. Swerve in Our Glory is a fine team, or was at the time. Acclaimed is a fine team. They're on the up and coming here. And certainly the Acclaimed would not have had their moment if FTR was the ones getting the belts at All Out. They would probably still be champions, right? But at the end of the day, like, you're just not using people properly. There are multiple people on your roster that you're using like dog shit. I don't think Tony Khan's a good booker. I think he's in over his head. I think he needs help. And I think he's going to start to lose a lot of these key figures. And I think rightfully fucking so. It's time for FTR to go. I'm sad to say that, but I think, if they go to the WWE, I think Triple H is going to treat them much more seriously. See, Triple H knows. He's an old NWA fan. He was a fan of Arn and Tully. He understands this dynamic. He understands what FTR are. He understands what FTR brings to the table. He will know how to use them. He's not going to try to put them in cartoon character outfits, to be the Uber gimmick. You want us to be a gimmick? Fine, we'll be every gimmick. That was a stupid Vince McMahon idea. Triple H will not make those same mistakes. But I like the idea of them taking a year off first. And here's why they're going to take that year off. And I'll lay it right out to you. Dax didn't say it in the interview, but this is why. Because they still have aspirations. They like doing shit like wrestling the Rock and Roll Express. They like going to New Japan and wrestling at Wrestle Kingdom. They like having that. They're just being used like shit on AEW TV. So if you take a year off from being on any TV and you get it all out of your system, you go work the indies and you have all of your dream matches that you could possibly have as an independent talent, right? Work for yourself, make your money, and they will. They'll be top indie stars if they do that. They will be the hottest ticket on the indies. They will be used all around the country, probably all around the world. They'll probably still be doing New Japan stuff. And then when that year is up, when they are ready, when they've gotten all of their dream matches out of their system and had all of their fun around the rest of the world, because they're not going to be able to do that in WWE. Right? But what they will be able to do in WWE is retire. So they'll do their year off. They're going to leave AEW. They will not renew their contracts. They're going to take a year off. They're going to get their dream matches out of their system. Then they're going to go to WWE and they're going to fucking sign a nice big fat 3 to 5 year contract for big money. And they're going to just fucking ride it out on the main roster, make that money for their family, and be able to retire on top there. And that's the trajectory I see for them. Because if I were FTR, I do not want to stay in AEW. There's weird politics going on there with the Young Bucks. We've seen it with FTR. We've seen it with CM Punk. We're seeing it. Okay? There's shit. It's not all friends wrestling. It's all friends wrestling if you're friends with the Bucks. If you're not, or if they want to hold you down for any reason at all, you're going to get held down. And it's time for them to go. One of the greatest legends in the history of the entire business and one of the greatest minds for professional wrestling. Of course, I'm talking about Disco Inferno. Took to Twitter this week with a tweet that pissed off pretty much the entire wrestling business. And the tweet is as follows here. 95% of modern day wrestlers have no clue how to get over. This, of course, coming from the genius that is Disco Inferno. We all remember how super over Disco was, right? Remember all the T-shirts Disco was selling and all the commercials he was on and stuff? You remember all your favorite Disco Inferno matches and storylines from when you were a kid, right? Look, Disco was over, but he was over because he was a product of his era, right? He was over because it was the Attitude Era, because it was the NWO era, and wrestling was hot, and everybody was over. Disco was over like Val Venus was over, right? Val Venus wasn't an actual over character. He was over because everything was over. Fucking Kai and Tai, the choppy pee-pee, that whole angle was over as shit. It was over because wrestling was over. Kai and Tai is not over. Disco Inferno was never over. I remember there was an indie show I went to, and Disco Inferno was there, and one of my friends in my friend group was sitting in the crowd, and he just kept yelling, "Disco Inflamo," to insinuate his possible homosexuality, which it was funny at the time, but hey, Disco can do whatever he likes, right? I don't judge. But Disco is an interesting character because he is super outspoken. If you ever hear him on Keeping It 100 with Conan, which is actually, look, I don't like their show overall because it's negative and because I really don't like Disco or get along with him. And they basically just shit on everything, right? They don't really put anything over. You know, there's no honest opinions going there. It's like basically like, oh, let us shit on everything because it's not as good as it was back in my day. And that's kind of Disco's take on everything is, you know, nobody's as over, or nobody's as good, or nothing's as it was back in his day. Back in my day, Glenn Gilberti, he's got a big old mouth, and he's got a lot of opinions, and usually all of those opinions suck. And they are typically the complete opposite of what you want to, you know, anything that he says, you know, if he's giving you advice as a young wrestler, just do the exact opposite and you'll be just fine. But hey, you know, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I got my opinions as you're listening to here. Certainly Disco is allowed to have his opinions here, but what do you think? 95% of today's talent don't have any idea how to get over? I guess you got to look at, first of all, how would you define getting over? Certainly like, you know, The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, these people were all over to you know, John Cena. These are megastar over. Okay. So there's that. How do you define over? Main events, crowd reactions, merch being sold. You know, MJF is over right now. Like a motherfucker. Like, how do you, okay, so that's over, right? You know, you're getting the fans' reactions, you're making the money, people are buying tickets to go see you, they're buying your shirts and your Funko Pops and all that cool shit. So how do you get over? How do you get to that point? And do people not really know how to get over? I think one of the bigger problems, he's not entirely wrong. 95% is a stretch. And, you know, wrestling's business is different than it was back then. One of the biggest problems is that the system now is designed to make you a product of the system. Back in the day, wrestlers got over and they made themselves megastars. Now the company is over. WWE is over, right? Austin Theory is not over. Nobody gives a shit about. Nobody's like, if fucking Impact Wrestling signed Austin Theory away from WWE, they're not going to turn into, you know, the second biggest brand all of a sudden. You know, he's not going to be a difference maker for them. So that's the truth for a lot of talent on either roster. They're not stars in the way that wrestlers were back in the day. But I don't know that it's their fault because they're not set up to allow themselves to get over. MJF is. I think AEW, because of the way that AEW is structured, it's more lenient. You're allowed to, you know, there's no scripted promos. You're allowed to come up with your own storylines. As long as Tony likes them and doesn't veto them, you're good to go. You know, apparently like an MJF has been coming up with a great deal of his own storylines. He is the mastermind behind a lot of the work that he's doing in AEW, and it's working out for him just fine. But once he jumps over to like the WWE machine, he's not going to be able to get himself over in the way that he is now. He's going to have to do it within the confines of the company, and the company itself is going to have to get him over. So I don't know that he's attacking the talent, and it's not their fault. They're not allowed to, and they're not really being taught to or groomed to either. Nobody is really taught to come up to treat this like a business anymore, treat themselves like the product, and try to build themselves as a brand. People are kind of taught to get the gig with WWE or AEW to a lesser extent, and hopefully they give you the big push, right? And that's not how shit works anymore. And people are struggling to get over, and people are they're not being given that opportunity, because in WWE especially, you're given a slot. Here's your position. Look at an Austin Theory. If he wanted to get over, if he was getting over, which he wasn't, but Triple H stripped him down to his fucking bare underwear, basically, right? He took everything away from him that Vince had put into Austin Theory. Triple H systematically dismantled it and broke him down to nothing, and now he's building him back up again in his own vision, which is fine. But he would not, had Austin Theory been like the next breakout star, Triple H, wasn't going to let him get past a certain point, because he had his own way to build him here. So I think that's more what's going on. I don't think it's that wrestlers don't know how to. I think it's that they're not being allowed to, or if they don't know how to, it's because they're not being taught. It's not something that's inherent to the business anymore. But it is a problem, and he's not entirely wrong. I just don't think that the blame needs to go all 100% on the talent here. Maybe 95% on the talent, right? No. It's the companies. It's just the way the business is nowadays. But Disco Inferno needs to, he's got these hot takes, and I think he needs to kind of check himself sometimes when he says stupid shit like this, because he wasn't over. I lived through it. I lived through that whole era. He wasn't over. The only reason he might have been a pinch over is because of the time and in the company and the era that he was working. Nobody gave a fuck about Disco Inferno. Nobody was buying tickets to see Disco Inferno. Not one person had a Disco Inferno t-shirt. So Glenn Gilberti needs to shut the fuck up, but he won't, because that's what he does. And hey, he's got a show to run. So I get that too. But what do you think? The 95% of today's talent have no idea how to get over? Or is it just that times are different and things are structured different? Or whatever the case may be. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments if you're watching on video. And we'll move on to the next. Well, Ric Flair seems to be the man that you go to for your hot takes these days. See what I did there? I put the name of his podcast in the thing. See it? Anyway, Ric Flair never shy about his opinions these days, is he? He never really was. But certainly nowadays he's just the grumpy, bitter old man, and he don't bite his tongue about anything. And he's always got a hot take on his podcast, To Be the Man, with Conrad Thompson. And look, sometimes, you'll hear Conrad, he'll try to change the subject and move on, and Flair will bring it back. He'll just keep talking about it. So he's always going to slip his opinions out there. Apparently he's got beefs with Eric Bischoff all over again. I thought we had moved on from this. Of course, if you remember, or may have heard at any point in your wrestling fandom, that Ric Flair still had a lot of animosity towards Eric Bischoff from his treatment in WCW, when Bischoff basically said that like Hogan and Piper were the only ones that ever drew a dime in wrestling. Said that right in front of Ric Flair. basically made Flair feel pretty worthless, and killed his self-esteem, cut his hair, all that shit. Flair had a lot of animosity at Bischoff, to the point where Bischoff, when he came into WWE to do the general manager gimmick, Flair took a swing at him backstage. Bischoff jokes about saying it wasn't really much of a punch. They thought he was just kind of doing it for show, but Flair had later said that he had forgiven Bischoff and all was well and they were fine and had kissed and made up and stuff like that. But apparently no more, because on the To Be the Man podcast, Ric Flair held nothing back and he gave his true thoughts on Eric Bischoff as it stands right now, today in 2022. Check out this clip.
Everybody wants to think there was animosity with me and Hulk. Hulk didn't sign my checks.
Right.
Eric did. Eric fucked me every time he turned around. And when he sees my documentary, he is still a prick in it.
Wow.
You know that. Oh, he's still a prick. He's an arrogant prick.
I can't wait to put you guys together. We need to do a Starcast and just do a Flair Bischoff debate.
No, you got to see what he says to me in this. I mean, and then they go, he said a lot of good things, Rick. Well, this kind of fit the narrative. I said, yeah, it sure did. It's dead on. He's just a prick. I'd love to do it one-on-one.
So it sounds like this is stemming from the documentary that Ric Flair did that's going to be coming out about the Nature Boy. It's supposed to be like a full in-depth of his entire career, all the ups and downs, the goods and the bads. And Rick's been touting this for a few weeks now, how good he thinks it is and how he feels this is the definitive Ric Flair documentary. But he said that Eric Bischoff is on it. And he said when he watched it, he's just a prick still. And look, I've been critical of Ric Flair's hot takes at times because I think he's so bitter. And I think he needs to let some of that go at his old age. It's not good to carry that around with him or die with that. But Ric Flair, Eric Bischoff is a pretty smug prick, is he not? Like, he's a very smug, dickhead, prick face fuck. He is. He just is. Every time when he takes his shots at like CM Punk or Tony Khan or AEW or anybody that he's taking his shots at, he doesn't hold back. He says it. Not only does not only are his words harsh and brash, but they come with a tone, and they always have ever since the 90s, since we've known Eric Bischoff. They've come with that tone of smart aleck, smart ass, smarmy, cocky, smug, dickheadish, prickish. Like, you can tell Bischoff is just fucking gleeful in his fucking arrogance. You know what I mean? Like, he takes pleasure and just saying the worst things about people. He's confrontational. He loves taking his shots at people, and he'll say it with a smile on his face and almost taunt you. Dare you to fucking say something back. I dare you to rebut. I do this. This is sport to Eric Bischoff. All his shooting and shit like that. Anytime Bischoff shoots on anybody or goes hard on, talks about anybody in any negative way, it's a challenge. It's an invite to confrontation. Bischoff fancies himself a tough guy. He loves this shit. He wants you to take a shot back at him so he can take a shot back. And this is sport to him. This is how he keeps his mind sharp. This is how he keeps himself entertained. Bischoff's a fucking prick. He's not changed into like this good person, or, he's not chilled out in his old age. Look, he has in certain aspects, and he's made amends with a lot of the people that have had beefs with him in the past. And he has, earned himself a place into a WWE Hall of Fame. And he has earned the right to have an opinion. And a lot of people respect Bischoff. And look, I do too. I like Eric Bischoff. He's hard to listen to because he's so boring and long-winded. But his hot takes are hot. And that's never changed with Bischoff. And he's still a smug prick. And I don't blame Ric Flair for saying this right now, and I haven't seen this documentary, but it does not surprise me one bit that Bischoff is on there saying some fucking prickish shit with a little shit-eating grin on his face. Like, yeah, Ric Flair, fuck him. He doesn't draw a dime. You know, like, I can guarantee it. Not the fuck him. I'm paraphrasing what he might say, but you know Eric Bischoff just as well as I do, right? If you listen to his podcast, you know. You can almost hear him now talking shit about Ric Flair on his own documentary. And Rick heard that, and it's who Bischoff is. And I just think fundamentally they're kind of oil and water. I think, Flair, Bischoff doesn't respect Flair in the way that Flair feels like Bischoff should respect him. And I think Bischoff also just enjoys pushing buttons and poking the bear a little bit and just being a prick. And Flair enjoys being a grouchy, bitter old fuck that holds a grudge. So I think that's destined to be the case for these guys, though. I would love, because they're both in the Conrad Thompson podcast family, if they could get those two together on a podcast. And fucking Bischoff has done some fun crossovers. I believe he did one with Jim Ross, and he just recently did one with Bruce Pritchard as well. Like filling in for Conrad, being the host with Bruce. So let's get Bischoff and Flair on a podcast together with Conrad and hash this shit out. Let them fucking just go at it. That is money. Take my money. Just fucking here. You know what I mean? Like that's entertainment right there. Let them two fucking go at it. Verbally, of course. But yeah, I don't blame Flair in this one because I know Bischoff, and I'm pretty positive that we'll all see exactly what Flair's talking about when we see this whole thing. But what are your thoughts? Is Flair just a bitter old grumpy ass man who just hates everybody and just can't help himself but talking shit about people and being bitter about things? Or is Eric Bischoff just a smarmy, cocky, arrogant, smug prick, or both? Are they both right? Let me know in the comments below, and we'll check out the next clip. Stokely Hathaway was on the Sessions podcast with Renee Paquette this week. This was a really fascinating, revealing interview. We got to see a very unique side of Stokely. I haven't had the chance to get to know Stokely all that well yet, Very impressed with his work on screen. Don't know a lot about the guy off screen, so we got to hear a little bit more in this podcast here. And a lot of this podcast was about mental health. Stokely Hathaway, very outspoken about recent mental health issues, maybe a couple years ago, I suppose. But, these are things that I did not know about him. I knew he had left WWE. I didn't know the reason. I guess maybe I had heard there was some mental health going there, but apparently he checked himself into a mental health facility, as a matter of fact. And this was the bulk of this conversation with Renee. Go ahead and check out a clip of this here.
Prior to signing to AEW, you were working at WWE with NXT, had a great thing going there. Yeah. And we don't really have to get into too many of the specifics. I mean, I think we kind of know what happened there and saw some of the things that happened there. But I think the thing that really sticks out to me was you being offered a contract extension, and then that just wasn't the thing that you wanted to do. What was kind of going on at that time?
I mean, to be completely honest, in February, I woke up one day and I just felt miserable. I just felt, I guess the right way would be crazy, right? Yeah. I couldn't, I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what was going on. And it kind of went away, and then it kept increasing to the point to where it was just debilitating. So, I voluntarily just committed myself. This was on a Friday. I think I got out on Sunday, and it was a very interesting experience, mainly because I would say in Florida, it's prison for the mentally ill. So when I went in, I had no idea what I was in for. I never want to go through this again. That was it.
So what kind of goes into making sure that you don't get back?
I think, for me, there is a lot of pressure. I think there's always a lot of pressure, because I feel as I feel like as a black talent, I get judged more harshly than other people. Like I feel like everything I do is analyzed, overanalyzed, right? And I don't. Obviously, everyone gets like, a critique, but I feel like mine is at like a different level, and I'm also incredibly hard on myself. So like, it was one of those things where I'm hard on myself. I like, give myself notes all the time, and I think it was just I had to realize that like it's wrestling. It's just wrestling. Mm-hmm. Like I can't. This isn't a live or die situation.
Yeah.
First of all, props to Stokely for opening up about this stuff. I feel like this is something that we're starting to get more comfortable with as a society, or that's becoming more common is addressing mental health. And I think that's super important, right? Because I'm old enough to have come from the generation still where you bury that shit, right? You just stuff it down deep inside. You don't talk about all your feelies and stuff because it just makes you a pussy, right? But thankfully that mindset has changed, and that people are, and I know a lot of you still are going to think that way, suck it up. But that's a product of the way you were raised in the environment and all of that. You know what I mean? Generations before us were very much like that, but that's starting to change. And that's going to eventually trickle down to the future generations where people are going to be a lot more open about this. Some could argue that people, that it's over, people complain about everything, the oversensitivity of everybody. Everybody's offended by everything. And I think that is one of the negative byproducts of this. But I think overall it's healthy that people feel comfortable opening up and talking about mental health issues, because a lot of us have them. Probably all of us at some point in time have gone through something that could resemble mental health issues. Look, I deal with depression a lot, like deep depression, you know what I mean? So I go through it, and it's hard, and it's not something that's easy to talk about. And you don't want to burden people, you don't want to sound like the negative Nancy. And this was something that really resonated with me, because Stokely's very quiet, reserved, keeps to himself apparently backstage. And this has gained him a bit of a reputation for maybe being standoffish or non-approachable or something to that effect. And look, that's, it's stuff that I've done in the workplace before. I've worked places where sometimes you just you're not that outgoing and friendly. You just kind of want to keep to yourself, and then people look at you like, oh, who's this fucking dickhead that doesn't want to talk to anybody? Or, because you never know what's going on inside with people. You never really know. So try not to look at people, and this is one of the things that he was trying to pitch. He's like, I want to, my peers in the AEW locker room to know that, like, if I'm quiet or I'm not talkative, or if I'm over here by myself and not with you guys over there, it's not that I don't like you or that I'm a dick, or, it's just I'm dealing with some shit, or I'm in my own head, or I'm just trying to not have so much anxiety, like, it's a lot of shit that we're all going through, and it's, there's other people too, like Hangman Page, very open about this stuff, his anxiety and that kind of thing. Definitely something that people are talking about more, and I love to see that. But this was a very deep interview with Stokely. It was not a get-to-know, fun, happy. There were some funner, upbeat parts of this, but this was really like a mental health episode, and it got deep, and it got dark, and it got hard to listen to at times. I shouldn't say it like that. It wasn't so dark or anything like that. But I mean, you gotta, be sure if you're going to listen to this that, it might kill your mood. So if you're feeling a little down and you want to kind of see how other people that you see on TV and that you look up to and that you're fans of be able to relate, this is definitely something, if you feel like you can relate, that I absolutely think you should seek out and listen to, because there's a lot of good takeaways from that. But, just be prepared, because if you're in a great mood and you're all like, it's gonna bum you out a little bit. It's a little bit of a downer, but important. It's important to get this stuff out there and to have these conversations and to make them commonplace, Like we just lost the green Power Ranger, right? Or the white Power Ranger, if you will. Don't you goddamn dare say the red Power Ranger, because nothing after those first 2 seasons ever existed. So you just shut your mouth. But, you know, these things are serious, and we need to take them seriously. And I'm not going to keep going with this because I don't want to be the Debbie Downer and just kill you guys either. We'll take it back up after this, but I wanted to make awareness for this because it's an important topic, and it's good that Stokely got to air it out there and got to show a little bit more of his side, his personality, and what he's going through, and hopefully that helps other people as well. Remember Jameson, the wrestling nerd? He had the glasses and the suit that didn't fit right, and his hair was all messy. He was the manager of the Bushwhackers. Remember him? I remember him pretty fondly from my childhood. I'd forgotten all about Jameson. I forgot he exists. Haven't heard a goddamn thing about him until suddenly I'm scrolling through the YouTube, and I find a channel called Wrestling Then and Now, who had an interview with Jameson, of all fucking people. Check out this clip.
So here I am doing stand-up, and friends of mine started this murder mystery company, which was very big at the time, talking about 1988. Yes, 1988. And it was a scripted show, but 50% of the show was improv. And my character just blew up in these shows. And Vince was at one of these shows, and I was playing Jameson at the time. In the show, in the murder mystery, I was that character that you've all seen. And Vince, I knew he appreciated me. I recognized him, and he was red at times from laughing. So I introduced myself after the show. He told me what a great job I did. And I had this thought, wow, wouldn't it be great to work for him? And that was a Saturday night. And believe me when I tell you, by Monday morning, because that's how the business is, I'd kind of forgotten about, he didn't call, or sure enough, late that morning, WWF called and the theater and said, how do we get in touch with Jameson? And he brought me in for an audition with Bobby, and Bobby didn't know what to make of me, but we had great exchanges, and they offered me a contract that day, and that's how it happened.
That was Jameson talking about how he ended up in WWE, a wrestling fan, but no aspirations to be a wrestler or break into the wrestling business, but just one day, Vince McMahon's at a fucking dinner party. And he's like, ha, 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 I like that guy. And Vince, feels like he can just buy people. You know what I mean? Like, hey, you, come be on my show. You know what I mean? How much is it going to take? That's it. Wouldn't it be great maybe it wouldn't be, but I mean, just imagine having that kind of power where you could just make somebody's entire career like that on a whim. You're just fucking like, hey, you're fun to watch. How would you like to be on national TV? Though I'm sure Jameson wasn't making too much money back in those days. Those were like the downside guarantees were like $100 for 10 matches, some shit like that. He definitely wasn't going to be making the big bills, but apparently he was a big Wall Street bro before then, like Wolf of Wall Street guy, like legit, and had made a shit ton of money doing that. Jameson seemed really cool, and he seemed just happy to have had his small role in the WWE and appreciative of his time there. And this is just a fun story. Like, I just love the story of Vince McMahon out to dinner one day and just sees this fucking entertaining guy, and he's just like, ha ha, I want that guy on my roster, pal. And he just fucking does it. And here you are, and we have Jameson, and he's the same character that he was playing at his dinner theater thing. You ever go to one of those dinner theaters? I wanted to. I've never been. I had tickets at one time, but never ended up going. But I thought that would be something fun to do some point in time. I had tickets for like the Murder Mystery Dinner Theater. Those would be super exciting to go to. But yeah, fucking Jameson. Hey, I just wanted to share that with you guys. Don't got really much else to say about it. It's Jameson. It's not like there's a lot to talk about there. But holy shit, he's still alive. And he did an interview about wrestling and he told his story. And I wanted to share it with you guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and we'll move on to the next clip. Al Snow was on Vince Russo's podcast, The Brand, this week. It's not often that I get to check out a Vince Russo show. For the most part, Vince Russo's opinions are those I try to avoid. But I do respect Al Snow, and Al Snow had a pretty good rant going on this particular episode, talking about the state of the business nowadays and how wrestlers are working for the dirt sheets now, working for that 5-star rating, 6-star, 7-star rating, instead of just working for the business. And he was particularly heated about this. Check out this clip.
The reason I am discrediting this is because of the fact that its source material comes directly out of the mouth of a person who has never once done this inside the wrestling business. He has been on the peripheral from the beginning as a fan, has never been in it and done it for a living. And unfortunately, those that are now in it and are attempting to do it for a living subscribe to this and ascribe to this opinion.
Why is that?
Where they will
why is that? Why?
Because he carries more sway and influence now than gate receipts do.
What kind of name for a wrestler is Al Snow? Ugh. There's a funny story. I was recently just finished the There's Just One Problem book from Brian Gewirtz, the former head writer for WWE. And in this book, he told a story about he was hanging out maybe in the writing room or something with Vince. And Vince just randomly, like Al Snow wasn't around. They weren't talking about Al Snow, just out of the clear blue sky. Vince just pops his head up and was just like, kind of wrestling name is Al Snow anyway? Ugh. That was it. And just continued to just fucking randomly. Apparently Vince hated Al Snow. I just had to share that part because it's funny as shit. But yeah, you know what? Al Snow is also one of the bitter, old, grumpy, old, grizzled old vets nowadays. And that, complains about everything in the current business and back in my day. But he has a point here. He's not wrong about this at all. I think Meltzer has taken over an entire generation of wrestling fans, or of wrestlers, I should say, or fans that became wrestlers, All these people grew up on Meltzer's star ratings and his dirt sheets and that kind of shit. So now they're all going out there and they're all just working towards getting that fucking Meltzer approval. What's the Observer got to say about me today? That's the wrong way to think. No, you gotta, look, if I'm a wrestler and I get a 5-star match or a 4-star match or whatever, like, I'm going to be like, dope, that's sweet. I'm proud of that. And I can't tell you that I wouldn't listen to what Meltzer has to say, but that's just one fucking guy's opinion. He's prominent. He is, probably the wrestling journalist still, right? Sean Ross Sapp's right up there. Wade Keller was pretty close, but I feel like he's kind of faded back nowadays, even though he's still doing it. He's just not as prominent, but there's lots of great journalists doing it, but Meltzer's the guy. But these wrestlers that are out there just, living or dying by what Meltzer has to say about shit, that's just, it's not the way to live as a professional wrestler. You got to worry about the business, man. Don't worry about having a 5-star match. 5-star matches are good, but you need them for like pay-per-views, certain angles and matches call for it. But look, if you just need to like have a fucking you know, just a bing bang boom, just a quick little fucking simple match or something, don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to work towards character and personality and storyline instead of just trying to take the biggest bump and the highest dive and the flippity floppity and that kind of stuff. You know, and plus, you know, Meltzer has a particular fondness for the flippy floppy Young Bucks style of match, and people working towards that. I don't know. I mean, it's a new generation, right? That's what the kids are into these days. They want that badge of honor, the Meltzer stars or whatever. But look, Al Snow's got a point, you know, as grumpy of an old man as he is, you know, he's somebody that at least for me, like when he has something to say, I listen and I respect it. You know, he's very smart to the business, even though he wasn't the biggest star and he wasn't the most over or anything like that. He certainly has one of the best minds, and he's not a bad guy to have around and to be getting opinions from. Vince Russo, on the other hand, not so much. You know, I wouldn't take much from Russo at all. Like I said, I try to avoid his podcast if I can, but you know, look, if there's something newsworthy on it, then certainly we'll share that. And I thought Al Snow going on this rant about Meltzer was particularly something I wanted to share with you guys. So let me know what you thought. On to the next. All right, we have come to the end of our journey, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you for sticking around to the end of the show, homies. End of the show gang, whatever we got to call ourselves something. We got to start a crew. We got to get jackets, matching jackets and stuff. We're the end of the show gang. Because, look, you know, people listen. And I top load the show, right? Like, you know, the later clips are not as important as the earlier clips. So I am always appreciative to the people that stick around, listen to the end of the show, listen to the full show. I'm continuing to see growth on this. I fucking love it. I'm going into 2023 balls out. I'm doing this. I'm going twice as hard. I'm going to kick ass. I'm going to be here for the foreseeable future. Thank you guys for being early followers. Thank you guys for hopping on, for listening to whatever the fuck I got to say about wrestling. This is so fun for me. I loved it. Like, I dread, I shouldn't say I hate, but I dread, you know, the long editing days and that sort of thing and having to do up all the thumbnails and stuff for these clips. But I love just sitting down and talking about wrestling. I could do it forever. It's why I do like the watch-alongs, which got blocked again, by the way. Thought I was in the clear, and I should have played it safe because I did the Royal Rumble one, right? And they WWE immediately blocked it for copyright or whatever. But under fair use, you can, you know, do a commentary over it or a reaction or a review, and it becomes something different. You know, you're not pretending that this Royal Rumble is my product. You are creating a new product out of it. So that falls under fair use, and it worked. I appealed the Royal Rumble, and they were like, yeah, sweet, fine, go ahead and play it, whatever. So then I did for the Survivor Series, I did a watch along for a couple War Games matches and then a Survivor Series match. And all those got blocked too, so I did the same thing with those. And then they were all cleared for a little while, so they were all able to show. I think, you know, they clear them while they're being reviewed after a certain point. You know, they don't just hold you up forever. But then all of a sudden, all four of them got blocked. Royal Rumble 2, which was, you know, months earlier. So it was like, that one should have been fine if I would have just kept my mouth shut. But apparently WWE was like, nope, fuck you. We're still, and I still have the option to dispute it further. But why? I'm not going to go battle WWE. You know what I mean? Like, not worth it. But so those were fun while they lasted. But I like doing that shit. I like talking about wrestling. I like creating new content around it. I did the review for Full Gear, did the review for the Survivor Series, did a review for There's Just One Problem, that book. Please check out some of my other content on here if you like these wrestling podcasts. Otherwise, just, you know, if you're just the wrestling podcast, that's cool too. It's fine by me. Fine by me. Shit. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe at Seth Grimes Media. Facebook, TikTok, or Twitter, if you're on any of those platforms. I do try to post extra shit there, whether it's shorts or clips or just my random musings or something like that. Buy the book, The Gathering, A Bold Journey into the Belly of the Juggalo Underworld. If you want to support me, support the show, as I haven't reached the point where I'm monetizable yet with the videos themselves. A great way to support me would be to just hop on Amazon or Audible or Kindle and buy the book. It's a fun read about a kid who goes to the gathering of the Juggalos, or a guy, I should say, and he hates it, and he's miserable the whole time, and he's grumpy, and he does a bunch of drugs, and there's lots of wrestling stuff in there. There's lots of wrestlers in there. So it's going to be probably a lot more entertaining than you might think it would be on the surface. So hard plug for that. That's a great way to support me. Otherwise, I do have a donation link down below too. If you just want to flip me a couple bucks, dude, this shit helps me so much, because I'm looking to get to the point where I do this full time. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to be. And then when I get to that point, I'm not just going to be doing this. I'm going to do lots of other shit for you guys. Lots of plans in the works. I think 2023 is going to be a big year. I'm excited for that. Again, I'm not sure what I'm going to do around Christmas time. I don't know, if we'll have a show for like Christmas and New Year's week. We'll play that by ear. I'll let you know. But I'm not going anywhere. I'll be back in 2023 if I do take a week off or something like that. Don't worry about it. Just traveling or holidays. You know. But I'll try to maybe do something. If I do that, I'll try to hook you up with something anyway. But that's all I got for you. Thanks for hanging out. Appreciate you. Peace, love, and pizza. I am your boy, Seth Grimes, and this is the Pro Wrestling Podcast.
I hate juggalos. I fucking hate them. I say all this with a grain of salt because for a good part of my own life, I proudly identified as a juggalo. You should come to the gathering with me. Nah, man. I'm not into all that whoop-whoop shit anymore. I'll pay for your ticket. I got fired today. Get the fuck out! Still got room for me? Spike, slow the fuck down! Cops!
Fuck your sleep. Fuck your sleep. Fuck your sleep.
The savages started closing in with their tiki torches and war paint. Shit. Run! You guys got a dead body here already? Even the aliens were throwing shade. It was pure panic and intense horror. There was a guy I saw got chopped in half. I had nothing left to go back to. You alive? Yep. The Gathering. A bold journey into the belly of the Juggalo underworld.